Hi guys, welcome back to the sixth episode now of the weekly review of the Terriers Talk podcast. I'm rejoining the lads this week. I was busy last week, so I couldn't join the lads. But yeah, it's been a massively successful week for Huddersfield Town. We've seen the B team won 3-1 on Wednesday, and we saw the appearance of a trialist who I think we can all guess by now is Oumar Niasse. I think we've heard rumours that he's been signed now pretty much since January. And that's I think his first appearance kind of in the B team, although he potentially has been training for a while. So I mean, I'll start off with that really. He played for about 30 minutes, I believe it was. Throughout the tweets from the academy, he was talked about really, really highly. Spoke about him having a few chances, and I believe he hit the post as well. And then I believe he came off. So I don't know if that was in preparation for him to try and be ready for yesterday's game, or if that was potentially keeping him fit for Wednesday's game if we can get the paperwork all finished by then. But he looked really strong, and he looked like he was ready for match action. With him only getting 30 minutes and causing a massive threat, yes, it might only be at youth level, but the fact that he's kind of still got it in his locker is brilliant news. And who knows what he could have done with 60 or even 90 minutes against a potentially weaker side, which would have massively got his confidence up. But the fact that we're now seeing him in a side means that they think he's ready. But we just need to get these final paperwork done, I think, and then we should potentially have them for either Wednesday or the Saturday. Which then brings us nicely into yesterday's game against QPR. Huddersfield looking for their first win since they last won in London on the 31st of October in London, coincidentally against Millwall. So Jay, if you wanna bring us into it, how did we play yesterday in your opinion?
I think, firstly, it goes without saying it's a massive win for Town. As you said, 31st of October against Millwall seems like years ago. Very, very fast-paced start by both teams. I know Town had 2 shots in the opening 4 minutes. I think we ended up to have 13 shots in the whole of the game, which is quite a weird start. Going off the amount of possession we had, which we will touch on later because that's a real positive. Both teams started really, really, really sharply, but I think it was immediately open to see that noticeably 3 of our players were off the mark. Aaron Rowe, Bakuna, and O'Brien. So I'll leave it to you, Jack. It wasn't promising to see, was it?
No, yeah, and as you say, we did start very well, and we created a few opportunities in probably the opening 10 minutes, and after that, the rest of the half, it was a very sluggish game, especially on our part. I was really disappointed with the first half on the whole, because a lot of passes were being misplaced by those 3 players that you were saying. Aaron Rowe, I don't believe completed a dribble, which is very out of character for Aaron Rowe, but I fully believe that he will bounce back after this game and continue being the brilliant player that we know he is. It's completely acceptable to have a poor game every now and then, especially for a lad so young. But it was disappointing nonetheless. Bakuna and O'Brien have been figures of inconsistency all season, so it's not that surprising, to be honest. But it's probably the first time we've seen them have a game of 2 such contrasting halves. But we'll go more into their sort of revival in the second half later on. But yeah, Aaron Rowe, it was summed up when he tried to take on a man fairly needlessly, and QPR broke very fast. Elias Chair, I'm a massive fan of, cut the ball back to Todd Kane, I believe, and Schofield, he should score, but Schofield still does well, denying him. It was fairly central. But what really impressed me about that was the kick away. Sort your feet out from such a position and kick it away to stop a certain goal on the rebound after stopping a goal. He should score, but it's good reflexes to get down. So that was massive for Ryan, and he does look somewhat back to his best, his confident self now, which is good to see. So yeah, the first half, it wasn't too great. So I'm sure Carlos Corberán had a few choice words at half time. And quite clearly, judging by the result and the second half performance, it worked. So Ben, if you want to touch on what happened at half time and beyond.
Well, I mean, just touching on what you said about Ryan Schofield, in the past few games, there's been so many calls saying how the sale of Ben Hamer, which we know nothing really apart from the fact that his contract was set to expire at the end of the season, and for a role that would see him be a backup to Ryan Schofield, he wasn't happy with the wage he would be getting and would be demanding more than what Huddersfield Town were prepared to pay for a backup keeper. And we'd seen quite a few comments on Twitter stating that potentially it was way too early for Schofield to come in, a loan move potentially next season to a lower league club, whoever that may be. But I think yesterday proved that he has still got it in him. He looked a completely different goalkeeper to what we've seen recently. And we saw the Ryan Schofield that we saw against Watford, for example, that gaining criticism from Ben Foster. And for such a young lad to be making kind of such experienced save like that and to shift his feet around like that, it's massive, because it just shows that, yes, whilst there are still a few flaws in his game, we do have a very good keeper on our hands that if we can nurture and just keep going and persistent with him, that we will have a very good keeper for a very long time, because he's early 20s. So I mean, I think we've got a brilliant keeper, and yes, whilst he does have quite a lot of mistakes in him, yesterday proved that he is a very, very good keeper. But like you said, I mean, with the first half, it was just very much Huddersfield Town this season, wasn't it, really? It was a very fast start in the first 15, 20 minutes, but then sloping off in the last 25 minutes and potentially running the risk of conceding. Luckily, we didn't, obviously, due to the back three and Schofield were brilliant yesterday, in my opinion. But again, we'll get onto that later. So, I mean, Jay, if you want to take us on to the goal.
Well, yeah, it was a classic Carlos ball down that left-hand side, wasn't it? It was very, very refreshing to see. And I think we had a saying around Christmas time or before, whenever it was Ben Hamer, but whenever our goalkeeper gets the ball and rolls it out to our left back or right back, you know something's going to happen. And thankfully, yesterday it did. Schofield rolled it out. Star played a lovely ball into Pippa. I think that's massively one of Naby Star's biggest strengths. He can play really nice, long, either aerial or on the ground balls into the heart of midfield, where we know we can get, we've got that midfield of Bacuna, O'Brien, Hogg, who can really manipulate a ball and pick a pass, when they're banging form. And Pippa did his thing, took the man on, did really well. And I was just watching the video this morning, and there were 6 people in the box for that Bacuna goal. It's just so refreshing to see. One of them was Bacuna, made himself known, nice and vocal, big shout of Pippa, squared it across, and what a finish. With Bacuna, you either get that or it's over Loftus Road and heading towards the Emirates. But thankfully, this time, the keeper didn't even see it. That is a massive goal, and you could see how big it was when Bacuna ran straight towards Carlos and got the whole team around him, around Carlos. I think that's what we've kind of been missing for this 2021 so far. We've been missing that team spirit, that camaraderie, that drive, and it goes without saying that 2 clean sheets against 2 relatively strong sides this season in 2 games is massive. So, I mean, moving on to Sheffield Wednesday, I think there'll be a lot of confidence in the side, but that's mainly down to our back 3, and I'll let one of you guys pick it up. They were impenetrable yesterday, weren't they?
Yeah, if I may, I'd just like to, just before, touch on Bacuna and O'Brien, because I did say I'd talk about the second half performance compared to the first, and they were both involved in that goal, which I think sort of sums up their second half. Lewis O'Brien doing what he does best, driving forward into the space and releasing Pippa to obviously make the cut back, and I don't need to say what Bacuna did, because if you're watching this video, you should know just what Bacuna did. So, yeah, I think they were fantastic in the second half. I won't touch on them too much because I do want to talk about the defence. But it just shows that clearly something was said at half time, and they stepped up the game massively, and it was needed. But yeah, onto their back 3, just fantastic. There's not really many other words to say other than fantastic. They were all so good. They looked like they'd been playing together for years. I think as they've been playing together in a back three, Romani, Keogh and Sarr, they've grown they've grown a bigger understanding of each other. I think Keogh especially, I think he's the Terriers top star of the week this week because he was man of the match yesterday in all of our eyes. He was superb. I've been wanting to criticise Richard Keogh because I don't think he's had a particularly brilliant time since joining Huddersfield Town in January, but he was so solid yesterday. Charlie Austin, Elias Sher and Chris Willock are a handful, and they can cause the best defences in this league problems. And Romani, Keogh and Sarr marshalled them excellently, and they were all 8, 9 out of 10 for me. I was very, very impressed. And should we stick with the back three for Sheffield Wednesday, I'd be very, very happy. And I could honestly see another clean sheet, which would make it 3 in a row, which is very, very nice to say out loud. But I think that wraps it up for the QPR game. So now let's look forward to the game. I just mentioned Sheffield Wednesday. And Ben, what are your thoughts on that game? Obviously, just employed Darren Moore as a new manager, so it'll be an interesting game.
Well, I mean, just quickly touching on two things with what Jay said and then what you said. Jay said about the camaraderie in the side, and I mean, we saw them go over to Carlos after the goal, but we also saw the team huddle at the start of the game. Now I know it's a little thing, but just little things like that where they can just kind of just remind themselves before the game that they're working for each other. They're not working for themselves, but they're working as a team. It's good to see. And yesterday, every single player out there performed as a team rather than performing as an individual, which I think at times we have seen in this squad over the past 12, 24, 36 months. And I think it's really good that now it looks like they are playing again for, the team rather than, playing for an individual player. And I think that's something that Bacuna's only gonna gain from, because I mean, I think Bacuna has been one of the most, disliked and criticised players in Huddersfield Town, the fan base since he signed. Pretty much, he's been a player that is a brilliant bit of individual flair, but he looked brilliant yesterday. And Danny Cowley commented on his performance, just saying how well he played and saying that he has got the potential there, but he needs to he's his own worst enemy in that kind of sense. And I mean,
yeah,
I think that the work that Carlos is doing with him and his progression under Carlos just shows how good of a player we've got. And he's only grown this season. Yes, he's still had these kind of moments of naivety, but he looks like he's really matured. And yesterday, that goal was a kind of a factor of just as a well done for him, because he really has grown this season. And then with what Jack said about the back three, I think something that suits us so well is that ability to kind of just change kind of formations in a sense. Naby Sarr can play out as a left back. Romani Edmonds-Green can play as right back, as we saw against Charlton. And Hogg can obviously drop back deeper, or Alex Leo could come into the side. And I think that's something that massively benefits us, because it allows us to be able to play two different systems going forward and then on the defence. So, I mean, it's massive that Carlos has that kind of versatility open to him tactically throughout the game, because it means that if they're coming on to us a bit more, then we can potentially sit in a 4-3-3 a bit more, kind of allow them to come on to us a little bit more, and people can kind of come a bit more forward. Because we know Romani Edmonds-Green and Naby Sarr will both sit back as fullbacks, whereas Aaron and people will kind of go up and down a bit more and potentially maybe attack a little bit more than Edmonds-Green and Sarr will. But it just allows Carlos a lot of options. So yeah, I think looking forward to Sheffield Wednesday, coincidentally on a Wednesday, I think it just offers so many options now that I think that because of injuries, I don't think we'd have as many options in these positions. But the fact that we've got coverage in so many positions in so many players means that I think coming to the end of the season now, when we've got so many players coming back, players being able to play in their natural positions, it could be a very, very different story to the last few games of the season. We could potentially be in a relegation battle, which we are currently, or we could potentially be looking at maybe even a mid-table finish and a look ahead to next season.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think Wednesday, like you said, gives us a lot of opportunity to play our own football. And quite weirdly, yesterday's game was Huddersfield Town football, but it wasn't statistically Huddersfield Town football. And I mean that when I say we had 33-point-something% possession. Normally, you see us coming out on average with 65-70% possession, because we dominate the ball so much. But actually, yesterday we had that amount of possession, that little amount of possession, and still had 14 shots, which just shows. And I know I, for one, have definitely been a critic of Carlos's tactical naivety at times. Just these few past weeks, but actually yesterday he showed that he can switch stuff up. I think he did. I think he showed that against Birmingham, against Cardiff, that he can, play direct. And I think the addition of Sonogo did show that yesterday. I think he held the ball very, very well. I think he was a menace. I think he was a real trouble for QPR's defence, and I think that did dry the game off a bit. And also, I'm just going back onto the options. Jonathan Hogg, he was back yesterday, and I think he'll be massive in the fight against Sheffield Wednesday. I've got a stat written down that all 11 wins with Hogg. I don't think we've won without him this season.
No, I don't think we have.
Which just shows what type of player he is. I know we've got obviously the prospect of Niasse coming in, hopefully, who knows. But we do have a lot of options now. And if we clear that injury sheet up, I think on paper we'll have a mid-table squad. And I think Carlos's coaching can push us on. So going really on to Sheffield Wednesday now, they're not doing very well. They've got a new manager, Darren Moore. But that should not be underestimated. I think QPR's manager yesterday was saying that our league table position doesn't do us justice, and he's right. So the Championship is one of the most unpredictable leagues in the world, and just because Sheffield Wednesday are 23rd, I believe, does not mean they can't come out and beat us 3-0. We know the type of players we've got: John Rhodes, Izzy Brown, Milas Kachunga. They can pose a threat. So realistically, Jack or Ben, either of you, this has got to be a town win, doesn't it?
I think, first of all, I've gone full circle. I asked this question and now I'm answering it. But no, I think Wednesday will be a really interesting game because sometimes league positions are false and they have got serious quality. Barry Bannon, Izzy Brown, we know how good these people are. Jordan Rhodes, yeah, he's not what he was, but he can still finish. Like, how they are so low down, it's very strange. It sort of reeks of mismanagement for me. But now Darren Moore is a very good manager. He's proved himself 2 or 3 different levels now. So I won't lie. I don't really know how they're playing under him right now. But after that QPR performance, 2 clean sheets in a row, we need to go at them and we need to try and get 3 points just to distance ourselves even further. It will be a really interesting game. I'll be very interested to see if we stick with the 3 at the back. For me, I think that is our best formation, regardless of whether we're playing against a 4 or a 3 or a 5 or whatever. So I'd like to see us stick with it, but obviously Carlos knows best, and we'll see. But it'll be a really interesting game, and I'm quietly confident for Sheffield Wednesday on Wednesday.
Yeah.
What about you, Ben?
Well, I mean, they've just kicked off against Norwich, and just quite interestingly with you saying about the league table, without their 6-point deduction, they would be outside of the relegation zone themselves. And I mean, that includes the point that they've currently got against Norwich. I believe the league table shifts that in. But I mean, whatever happens today, I mean, we've got to keep an eye on, because I mean, if they pull out the unthinkable and stop Norwich's current wins run, that'd be massive for their confidence under Darren Moore. It'd be a massive thing for them to go and push on off. You know, they are a good side at the end of the day. They have got a lot of quality. So it will be an interesting tale of what happens today. Because that'll show us really how good of a side they are and how much of a competition they can put up against the Norwich side. And whatever happens, they will look to bounce back or potentially just carry on a run against us. So I think we've got to be very wary of them. But at the same time, I do think following the 2 results that we've had, obviously Jonathan Hogg now back, and obviously the start that you said about us not winning without him in the side, with him back, it's a massive positive. I think it could potentially be another Huddersfield win, but I am obviously very worried about the quality that Sheffield Wednesday have got, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see a former Huddersfield Town player score against us, because that just would be our luck. Whether that's an Izzy Brown, Elias Kachunga, or Jordan Rhodes. I beg it's not Elias Kachunga, because that would sting a bit, but I think that there is a definite chance that there will be a very good game between us on Wednesday night.
Yeah, I completely agree. One more thing before we wrap this episode up, relatively short. Jack, you did mention it before, but I think we ought to elaborate on this. Our star of the week, personally, and I think I'll speak for you too as well, Richard Keogh. I think it's fair to talk in depth about Keogh before we do wrap things up. For minute one, he didn't. I mean, he showed some he was very bold. Sorry, not bold.
I mean, he is old, but it's a bit far away from that still.
Yeah, so like I said, he did show some attacking threat as well. I think he went wide with 2 headers. He drove forward. He carried the ball well. He mopped up well. So it does beg the question, how can Richard Keogh come from the Richard Keogh of old and Huddersfield Town shirt to that yesterday? Is that to do with Carlos? Is that to do with himself? What would you put it down to?
It's to do with the 3 at the back. He suits being the central defender in the 3 at the back. It's not the first good performance he's had, and coincidentally, all the good performances he's had has been in the 3 at the back. I think Naby Sarr is similar, although he has been looked competent in a pairing, especially with Oumar Niasse. But Naby Sarr also excels in the 3 at the back. So I think just quite simply, it is just to do with the 3 at the back, and I'm happy for him. And he was fantastic yesterday. As you say, I think he probably should have scored. I think he'll know he should have scored with that header. It's a free header. He's got to jump on his man, just steer it on target. But it's okay. We did win. But say we draw, I think he'd be kicking himself. But let's not think about that. So yeah, he was fantastic yesterday, and I think going forward he has to be deployed in the 3 at the back to get the best out of him.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at the January signings, they're all doing really well now. I mean, I'm just going to speak specifically about Keogh, but he's a player that when he came in, there was a lot of criticism about him, and understandably so. He's a player that's getting on a bit. I know I definitely was a bit of a critic about him. And Twitter went into absolute meltdown at the signing of Richard Keogh, because he seemingly went against everything that Huddersfield Town were looking to do, with invest in youth, and promote youth players into the first team. And signing Richard Keogh, a League One centre half who's 30 odd years old, doesn't fit that kind of regime of signing young players. But he's proved exactly why we have signed him yesterday. Because he suits that the 3 at the back, and it brings a question of, well, if Keogh plays, does that mean that Vallejo might not play as much? Which, although it is frustrating, it looked smooth and it looked strong yesterday at the back. The players kind of had that understanding, which I don't think we've seen in a while. Whether that's to do with Keogh playing as a centre half and Romani Edmonds-Green returning back as a right centre half, I don't know. But it just did look like potentially don't shoot the messenger, but potentially our strongest defensive lineup.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that is everything for today. So we'll wrap it up there. Thank you again so much for watching this episode of the Weekly Review. If you aren't already, please subscribe. We're getting ever closer week by week to 100, which would be massive for us. Like it, share it around, and we will see you next time on the next Weekly Review, where we'll be covering Sheffield Wednesday and Brentford. So see you later, guys. Have a good one.